Hello again, and welcome to today's content of understanding statuses, buffs, and debuffs. I said in the intro, for the table of contents, I'll be explaining what is a buff, a debuff, and like a condition, and the mechanics behind how exactly does debuff resistance work. After that, I'll go into what is a status, and how do status resistances work, and the mechanics on how statuses can land or proc, basically. First off, buffs and debuffs. Buffs are considered pretty much like conditions in that they have no fail equation, usually without a base percent chance of failing. They're usually tied to attack and magic percent up, or hate up, or a type attack resistance up. Debuffs are not actually considered conditions because they actually do have a fail equation, but start at a base 100% chance of landing, so it's often heavily neglected. These are usually tied down to defense downs, imperils, breaks, and other stat lowering abilities. Now the more complicated part are actually conditions. Ability and skills that do not have a fail equation currently, such as like Shadowblade, where it will always heal for the damage it deals. Maybe if there is like an undead enemy that we can hurt ourselves if we use it on them, but currently it heals for the damage it does, period. Like, I haven't seen it not heal it for some reason. Maybe in the future it might change, but for now that's how it is. Similarly, Magic Infuse will always dispel auto revive and re-raise statuses without fail, and will also always AP break of 20. Lastly, most if not all barriers are also conditions where they will always land on the targeted unit without an equation needed. So it's like conditions can be considered buffs, as I said earlier, but there are also negative quote-unquote conditions like Magic Infuse, so they have their own category compared to buffs. So for buffs, we'll start with Warrior of Light. When we select Brave Presence here, you can see at the top left the added buffs and the percent chance they are granted. So if we look at it, it's all 100%. Because there's no fail, there's nothing hindering it from not working. So we'll use Frederica's Armed Fire buff, and similarly, 100%. It'll just work. So if we go to Sid's or Orlando's illusion buff, same thing. It's very simple. Buffs do what they want pretty much 100% of the time. It just works. Moving on to debuffs, we'll start with this test example Ayaka. As we can see, she has Savior's Protection on, which gives her 12 debuff resistance and magic attack resistance, and she has Echoing Screams at limit break 3, which is an attack debuff resistance of 16. What this means is that all debuffs in general have an 88% chance to land because of her Savior's Protection of 12%. All attack related debuffs have a 72% chance to land due to the Savior's Protection and Echoing Screams bestowed effect. As we can see, I'll show you with Orlando's Crush Armor. If we put it onto Ayaka, it has an 88% chance of working because of Savior's Protection. It just gives her that 12% flat. So if we look at Crush Weapon, it lowers the attack. Theoretically, it should be 72, and there it is, 72%. As I said earlier, since Savior's Protection is for all debuffs, we'll move on to Kain with his Piercing Lance, which is lowering the Pierce resistance by 3 turns. So if we use on Ayaka, 88%. Because it's a resistance down, it's not a attack down related debuff. So if we go to Kilfi, Staff Collector is magic resistance down. If we look at it, 88%. So I hope you can understand a little bit on how that works. Just so that we can get a better understanding though, we'll do a little bit more testing. So on to part 2 for debuffs, we'll use Warrior of Light with his passive, Quelling Chaos, which gives a whopping 50% debuff resistance to Spirit and defense debuffs. So what this means is that all debuffs in general still outside of defense and Spirit have a 100% chance to land, nothing to mitigate from there. But defense and Spirit related debuffs, it has only a 50% chance to land because of the passive Quelling Chaos. So for example, if we use Crush Weapon here, we can see that if we put it onto Warrior Light, it has a 100% chance of landing because it's not related to defense or Spirit. However, when we use Crush Armor onto him, you see it has a 50% chance of actually landing because of Quelling Chaos is in play. So onto that, we'll move on to Ayaka with her D-Shell and D-Protect. There is no exception. D-Protect here, as we can see, still only has a 50% chance to land. If we go to D-Shell, it's the same thing. Since it lowers Spirit, 50% chance to land. It just works that way. So if we move on to Ruin's Stern, his Hazard Crusher lowers defense, but it is also no exception. Because of Quelling Chaos, it only has a 50% chance to land. So as you can see, the more units that are able to stack up debuff resistance, eventually you can nullify debuffs from landing, but currently there are only a very few ways to get debuff resistance, so maybe in the future it'll be more viable, but as of right now it's mostly just RNG chance. Hopefully this helps you understand debuffs and debuff resistances. So on to conditions now. They are the state of being quote unquote they just land, period, no exceptions, nothing, it just works. So like for this example, we'll use Dwayne with his magic infuse. The AP breaks by a flat amount, no questions asked. So if we see here, there's nothing on there, 748 damage. We'll see a second line that says 20, that was the AP break, right there. So next up is Orlando's Shadowblade, which heals for 100% of the damage. So when we use Shadowblade onto Warrior Light, it says 321, but that's just the predicted amount of damage. If it does more, it will heal the exact amount it says. Unless maybe there's like a healing down or not. There, it crit for 370, healed for 370, and Warrior Light counter. But yeah, as you can see, Kilfia has her own absolute condition, which is Shield of Staves. It just works. There's no condition, it just works. There's no prompt. So we carry on. Lastly, just like Kilfia's barrier, we have Warrior Light's barrier, which is Invincible Shield. Once again, no prompt. It just works and is applied. Kinda hope this makes sense on differentiating different types of abilities and effects this game has, since we'll only get more and more abilities that we'll have to eventually figure out, but this is what I put the category into of conditions. I also forgot to mention, but for this scenario, I didn't say anything about Dwayne's dispel on the re-raise because I don't actually have anything like that right now. I had a friend test it out, and regardless, it's the same thing. There's no prompt, it just works if they have it applied. For our next topic, we'll look at statuses. And looking at the statuses, there's plenty to go around. These are only a few examples. For the positive examples, statuses like Z's TMR, the effect of Revitalize, is a status. Other statuses like Haste, Protect, Shell, Full Life, all count as statuses as well. So when we look at the negative examples, it's pretty much the status ailments you can inflict upon your opponents. So overall, statuses have varying percentages in their base chance to go into effect, which I'll get into right now. So here we are for the base percentages of the statuses that I mentioned earlier in the previous slide. I'll explain them so it's easier to comprehend, and it'll take a little bit of time, but bear with me because it's kind of important. So for statuses, everything shares one common factor. Doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, which is the value of faith. If you look at Z's TMR, the base chance of it is to proc is 200% of your total faith value. Since the total faith value is only associated with yourself in Z's TMR's situation, because you do not cast it onto someone else, it's only yourself. You need a total of 50 faith for it to work 100% of the time. In the other corner, we have Full Life, which is 50% of the total faith value. Since Full Life involves a target and a caster, it combines both the target's and caster's faith values, so that's why it's called total faith. In this situation, that means a 97 faith value caster using Full Life onto another 97 faith unit target will have a 97% chance to land, because 97 plus 97 times the 50%, which is basically dividing it by 2, has a 97% chance to land. If the caster has 97 faith and the target having 30 faith, Full Life will only have a 63.5% chance to land. And the way the game works with decimals is it has different rulings on everything, but when it comes to statuses, it will round down the number or floor the number. Always. So that 63.5% will always be 63. It won't be 64. Similarly, this also means the chance of landing something like 24.99%, it will literally floor the number to be 24%. It does not reach the 25% threshold. It has to floor the number if it's decimal. So if we look at negative examples, it's actually exact same scenario. If the caster and target switch faith values, it doesn't really matter because it'll be the exact same total faith value in all scenarios. It just depends on what the faith values are. So for negative examples, like I said, the base chances are lower, but it is still following the same rule of going off the total faith. So to begin here, we'll look at Warrior of Light. We'll look at his stat page. He has 30 faith. So because he has 30 faith and Z's TMR on, Revitalize should only be a 60% chance of working. And boom, there it is, 60%. Meaning you need 50 faith to have a 100% chance of Revitalize working. Luckily, we landed at 60% here. So if we move on to kill feed, we'll use Protect onto Warrior of Light. As you can see here, it has a 100% chance of landing because kill feed is at 97 faith, as you can see here, and Warrior Light is at 30, meaning it's a 127% chance of working because Protected base chance of value is 100% of total faith, 127 in this scenario. Lastly, we use Warriors of Light Limit Break, Crystal Braver. Ironically, since it has the same properties as Protect and Shell itself, it has a 100% chance of working of the total faith value. And in this scenario, since we're missing a second unit's faith value because we're bestowing on ourselves, it should only be a 30% chance. So from here, you only see Shell land, not Protect, because we only hit the 30% on the Shell instead, not the Protect. Just in case if people are curious, like, oh, what if kill fees Protect like interfered with that? No, I actually tested it. The precaster Protect on Warrior Light doesn't actually affect this. If the Protect was gonna land at all from the 30%, it would have actually reworded. The text would have came up again. So it doesn't actually matter. Before we get into the video, these are testing grounds for the faith values that we're going to be working with. Remza has 50% slow resistance, Warrior of Light has 50% mobile resistance, and Dwayne has 10% disable resistance, and they all have their respective faith values. So I'll explain more in the video what these all actually mean. So Kane's Limit Break is Dragon's Bane, which is a total of 67% base chance of a slow landing before the total faith values. Theoretically, this should mean that Remza actually only has a 24% chance of being slowed, and Ayaka has a 98% chance of being slowed. Still a bit confused? The reason why is that Remza has 97 faith, which is high. The thing is, Kane has 50 faith, so the total faith is 147. However, since Remza has 50% slow resistance, it directly affects the base chance of the ability. So Dragon's Bane base chance of 67% is now actually 17% because 67 minus 50 is 17. So 17% of 147 total faith is 24.99. And as I said before in a previous slide, since statuses are floored, the numbers are rounded down. This will not be 25% in the game, it will show 24% instead. So for Ayaka's case, 97 faith plus 50 faith is still 147. However, due to no slow resistance, we will now take 67% of 147 total faith, which is 98%. So anyway, let's get to the video. As discussed, we'll use Kane's Limit Break, just to show he has 50 faith here as our caster for faith values. When using his Limit Break, it inflicts it slow. So when we use it here, go into Warrior Light, it's a 53% chance to slow Warrior Light. Remza is at 24%, as we said earlier, and Ayaka should be 98%, there it is. The reason for this is that Warrior Light has 30 faith, and I already explained Ramza's and Ayaka's scenario. Because Ramza has that innate base 50% slow resistance that I'll show right here at 97 faith, boom, 50%. So it lowers the base chance before you go into the total faith values. So unfortunately for Ayaka, 97 faith, she has no resistance. It's a very good chance she gets slowed at 98%. So we'll move on to Dwayne's situation with how his 10% disable resistance work. So we'll look at Darkness here, which has a base chance of 25% chance of landing for disable. Onto Warrior Light, 20%. So if we look at Ayaka, 36%. Remza, 36%. The reason why is because Dwayne's base faith is pretty low. So if we use it onto Kane, 25%. Onto himself, 15%. And there's a reason for this because of his innate disable resistance of 10. So if the base chance is 25 for Darkness, it's actually 15% now for Dwayne because he has that 10% base resistance that lowers the base chance already. Lastly, to end it off, we'll use Ayaka's Immobilize, where Rems has a 48% chance of being immobilized here. 48. Dwayne should be at 36. Yep. And Warrior Light should be at 0 because of his 50% innate immobilize, meaning he is unable to be immobilized unless it's above a base chance of 50% on the cast. And since immobilize's base chance is 25%, the resistance cancelled out completely. There is no way to immobilize Warrior Light unless you're able to go above 50% base chance of the immobilized landing. And that wraps it up pretty much. Hopefully, to all the watchers here, you understand how exactly buffs, debuffs, and statuses work. So it's a very big part of the game, so it's good to understand. For my next video, I'll probably go over like hate mechanics and how Dispel works with it to understand those topics in a general sense. And once again, thanks for watching and peace out.